Tonight we drift not to a battlefield's clamor or a throne room's intrigue, but to a quieter, more fragrant corner of history. You are in Constantinople, the queen of cities, on a morning in the early 11th century. The first light is just a pale smear over the Sea of Marmara, but the city is already whispering awake. You are not a soldier, a scholar, or a senator. Your hands, soon to be stained with resins and oils, are the tools of a different kind of power. You are a perfume maker and merepsos, and as you shuffle from your modest home in the shadow of the great aqueduct of Valens, the air itself begins to tell you the day's story. It's a story of incense drifting from 100 church doorways, of bread baking in communal ovens, of the faint, ever-present tang of the sea and the millions of people crowded onto this peninsula. Your world is built not on stone and law alone, but on scent. And you are about to learn that in this city, crafting a luxury is a serious, regulated, and surprisingly calm business, provided you follow the rules. The reality check, of course, is that your survival here depends less on your nose and more on your ability to navigate a bureaucracy that makes a modern tax form look like a friendly greeting card. You probably won't survive a single misstep with the guild treasurer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your path is deliberate, a practiced routine. You do not walk the grand processional way of the Misi, where senators and generals parade. You take the narrower, older streets, your sandals scuffing against paving stones worn smooth by centuries of feet just like yours. The sounds are intimate, layered. The clatter of a shutter being opened above you, the splash of water from a fountain, the low murmur of a prayer from within a home. The smell of the night, damp earth, cool stone, is slowly being warmed away. And then you turn a corner and the first true scent of your profession hits you. Not perfume, not yet, but the raw, honest smell of the trade. Wood smoke from the firing kilns of the potter's quarter, the sharp, tannic reek of hides from the leatherworker's lane. Constantinople is a city of guilds, and each one claims its own olfactory territory. Your destination is the Argiopratia, the street of the perfume sellers, though your workshop is a few alleys off its main bustle. To get there you must pass through the Nymphaeum quarter. Here the air changes again, growing denser, sweeter, more complex. It's the smell of money, of empire, of desire. Your nose, already trained from years of apprenticeship, begins to dissect the bouquet without conscious thought. There's the honeyed, sun-warmed sweetness of storax resin from Syria, carried in on a caravan that spent months crossing the desert. Underneath it, the clean, piercing aroma of spike lavender from the hills of Thrace, a cheaper staple but no less vital. A whiff of something animalic and profound, likely civet, a precious paste scraped from the glands of a small Ethiopian cat, used in the tiniest quantities to give a perfume depth and longevity. Someone is opening a new jar. You pass shops with their front shutters down, forming display counters. On them, small pottery and glass vessels gleam. Some hold solid unguents, thick salves of scented fat. Others contain liquid perfumes, oils infused with herbs and flowers. A wealthy matron, her paludamentum cloak a subtle shade of purple only the well-off can afford, is testing a rose oil, dabbing a minuscule amount on her wrist. He doesn't see you. You are part of the scenery, a cog in the machine that produces her elegance. You don't mind. Invisibility is a perk. Lets you observe. You see the merchant, a fellow guildsman with the practiced smile of his trade. He is explaining the provenance of the rose oil, from the imperial gardens at Philippation no less. You suppress a knowing smirk. That oil is good, very good, but it's almost certainly from a large, perfectly respectable estate in Macedonia. The imperial label is a marketing flourish, one the guild regulators might frown upon if they heard a direct lie, but which exists in a comfortable gray area of implication. The customer buys the story as much as the scent. This is the first lesson of your day. In your trade, reality and perception are two separate ingredients, and you must blend them carefully. You finally slip into the shaded alley that leads to your workshop. The door is a heavy thing of oak, bound with iron. You produce a key, a privilege of a master craftsman, and the lock clunks open with a satisfying solidity. Pushing inside, the world narrows and focuses. The outside cacophony of the city muffles to a distant rumor. Here in the cool, dim stillness is your kingdom. The room is long and narrow, lit by a few high, slit-like windows that cast bars of sunlight across the central workbench. The air is still, but it is never neutral. It is a library of smells, a permanent, layered record of every concoction you've ever made. The dominant note is the clean, slightly bitter scent of base oil, usually high-quality, odorless sesame or sweet almond oil, which you buy in vast amphorae. This is the canvas upon which you paint. Then the supporting notes, the dusty, spicy warmth of cinnamon bark shavings in a jar, the sharp, medicinal punch of myrrh tears, like ancient sorrow solidified into resin, the citrus herbal lift of costus root, a favorite in men's fragrances. Your tools are laid out with monastic neatness. Granite grinding stones of different grades, from coarse for crushing hard resins to fine, glass-smooth slabs for pulverizing dried flowers. A collection of bronze and copper mortars and pestles, each dedicated to a specific type of ingredient to avoid cross-contamination. Glass beakers and flasks, some discolored by years of use. A small, finely calibrated scale with weights of lead and bronze. And the heart of the operation, rows and rows of ceramic pit hoy, storage jars sealed with wax and cloth, each labeled in your own shorthand. This is your life's work, slowly accumulating. You hang your plain outer cloak on a peg and don a simpler linen work tunic. Your first task is not creative but clerical. You must consult the Book of the Eparch. This is the city governor's codex, the law of the guilds. Your copy is a worn papyrus scroll, specific sections copied out by your own master and given to you when you earned your independence. You unroll it to the sections concerning the Merepsichoi. The rules are exhaustive. They specify where you can buy your raw materials, only from approved merchants in the designated markets. They set the prices for certain common compounds to prevent destructive undercutting. They dictate the standards of purity. No diluting precious balsam with cheaper turpentine, a common fraud. They even legislate your behavior. No perfumer shall entice a customer away from another perfumer's shop by calling out to them. The calm of your profession is enforced by the threat of hefty fines, confiscation of goods, or, in extreme cases, expulsion from the guild and the city. Historians still argue whether this strict regulation stifled innovation or provided the stable, guaranteed quality that made Byzantine perfumes famous across 3 continents. You run a finger down the list. Today you need to replenish your supply of mastica, a resin from the island of Chios that gives a bright, pine-like freshness. The book states you must purchase it from the registered spice merchants near the port of Theodosius. No exceptions. It's not the closest source, but rules are rules. This bureaucratic rhythm is the true backdrop to your art. The creation of beauty here is a meticulously documented process. You make a mental note for the afternoon. But first, the morning's real work awaits. You have an order to fulfill. A simple rose and lavender nardinum for a mid-level bureaucrat's wife. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent on your workshop. You select a jar of pre-prepared rose petal mash, from petals you macerated in salt weeks ago to draw out their anthin, their floral essence. The calm, methodical work of straining, blending, and gently warming the oil begins. As your hands move through the familiar motions, Your mind is already elsewhere, planning, calculating, navigating the serene and scented maze of your life in the world's greatest city. You scoop a handful of dried rose petals from a coarse linen sack. They are not the supple, fragrant blooms you will later handle in the imperial gardens, but a commodity, shipped from Egypt, slightly brittle and faded to a deep purple. Your task this morning is foundational, almost menial. You must reduce them to the finest possible powder. This is the work of an apprentice, and though you have been a master for 3 years now, you maintain the ritual. It keeps your hands honest, you tell yourself. The truth is, in the quiet solitude of the workshop, the repetitive motion is a kind of meditation. You spill the petals onto your largest granite grinding slab, a surface worn into a gentle concave bowl by decades, perhaps centuries, of this exact motion. You pick up the mullah, the smooth, heavy handstone that fits your palm like an extension of your own bone and muscle. The first press and circular grind releases a cloud of scent, but it is not the lush, romantic perfume of a living rose. It is dustier, sharper, with a hint of tannic bitterness, like tea leaves. This is the reality of the raw material. The luxury comes later, through patience and process. You settle into the rhythm, press, grind, sweep the accumulating powder toward the center with the edge of your hand, press, grind. The sound is a low, persistent rasp, the soundtrack of your apprenticeship, now the metronome of your professional life. Your mind drifts back, almost against your will, to the first day you stood at a slab like this one. You were 12, your hands soft, your nose untrained, your head filled with grandiose ideas about creating legendary fragrances for emperors. Your master, a man named Leo with forearms like knotted rope and a permanent sniff from a lifetime of evaluating aromas, had handed you a lump of frankincense resin. Powder, he had said, his voice gravelly. Not grains. Powder. Like the dust on a moth's wing. When I can blow on it and it becomes a cloud that chokes me, then you may stop. You worked for 4 hours. Your wrists ached. Your shoulders screamed. The resin, at first hard, grew gummy with the heat of friction, sticking to the stone and the mullah in frustrating globs. Leo said nothing, occasionally sipping from a cup of watered wine, watching the street outside. When you finally presented your pile of coarse, uneven granules, he leaned over, pursed his lips, and blew. The granules didn't move. He looked at you, his expression unreadable. Your nose is not your tool yet, he said, not unkindly. Your hands are your tools. Your patience is your tool. The nose comes later. Again. That was the true beginning. The apprenticeship was not a romantic mentorship filled with secret formulas whispered by candlelight. It was a slow, systematic breaking down of your assumptions and a rebuilding of your senses. For the first year, you barely touched a finished perfume. You cleaned jars. You sorted incoming botanicals, learning to spot insect damage in a bundle of dried lavender or detect the faint sourness of iris root that had been stored in damp conditions. You learned the guild's code by having it read to you while you worked. You ground everything: rose petals, myrrh tears, lumps of styrax, dried chips of sandalwood. Your world shrank to the circle of stone in front of you and the raw, unblended smells that filled your nostrils until you could not smell your own dinner. The breakthrough came not with a spectacular creation, but with a failure of smell. One afternoon, after months of grinding cinnamon, your master blindfolded you and placed a series of small clay cups under your nose. Name them, he commanded. You inhaled. The first was easy, cinnamon. The second, rosemary? Maybe thyme? You guessed wrong. It was costus root, which you had ground just the day before. You were humiliated. Leo didn't scold you. He simply said, "You see with your eyes. You must learn to see with your nose. Smell is not a fact you know. It is a landscape you memorize. From then on, your training changed. He would have you smell an ingredient in its whole form, then smell it freshly ground, then smell it an hour later, noting how the scent changed, or bloomed, as he called it. You learned that bitter almond, which smells enticingly marzipan-like at first, develops an unsettling cherry-pit sharpness over time. You learned that the animalic funk of castoreum, from a beaver's gland, becomes warm and leathery when diluted. Your nose became fatigued, confused, rebellious. He taught you the perfumer's reset, to press your nose into the crook of your elbow, where the clean, neutral scent of your own skin could clear the olfactory palate. It was a physical, grueling education. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine guild system, with its long, rigid apprenticeships, was a form of indentured servitude or the only possible way to transmit such a vast, tactile knowledge base in an age before formal science. Your current grinding is almost automatic, your mind free to wander as your body performs its perfected task. The petals are now of fine, magenta dust. You stop, set the muller aside, and perform the test. You lean close to the stone and give a soft, steady exhale. The powder lifts in a fragrant cloud, settling slowly back onto the slab. A satisfied nod, almost imperceptible. It would pass Master Leo's test. But the work is not done. This powder is for a solid unguent. You now reach for a jar of prepared fat, not goat or sheep fat, but the more stable and odorless axungia, made from the fat around a sow's kidneys. You scoop a portion into a clean bronze bowl set over a very low brazier of coals. The fat begins to melt slowly, gleaming. You add the rose powder, and then, with a wooden spatula, you begin to stir. This is the infusion, the transfer of essence from solid to medium. It is not dramatic. It requires a constant, gentle heat and a patient, circular stir for what will feel like an eternity. This is the other half of the apprentice's lesson. The immense, quiet time it takes for anything of quality to emerge. As you stir, watching the magenta stains spread through the white fat like a sunset cloud, you think of the other senses you honed. Touch, knowing the exact gritty texture of true ambergris versus a wax counterfeit by rubbing it between your fingertips. Hearing, the subtle crackle of good frankincense resin when thrown on a hot coal, versus the dull fizz of a poor quality batch. Even taste, used sparingly and dangerously. For some aromatics like spikenard have a distinct, bitter flavor that confirms their identity. You became a sensorium for hire. Your calm is not the absence of effort, but the deep focus of a body and mind completely engaged in a slow, silent dialogue with the material world. The joke among perfumers was that you could identify a colleague in a pitch-black room just by the smell of the particular resins ingrained in their hands and the faint, perpetual sniff they all shared. It was a dry, professional pride. The rose fat is now fully infused, a uniform pale pink. You remove it from the heat and pour it into a small, shallow ceramic dish to set. It will take a day to solidify into a waxy pomade. It is humble, workman-like. But within it is the captured sunlight of an Egyptian field, the labor of the harvester, the grind of your own stone, and the slow, warm patience of your stir. This is the true foundation of your craft. Not the dazzling end product in a gilded glass bottle, but this quiet, transformative act in a sun-dappled room. You clean the bronze bowl meticulously, the ritual of maintenance as important as the ritual of creation. The morning is wearing on. The scent of roses, now warm and rich, hangs in the air of your workshop, a testament to the calm, persistent alchemy of your hands. Long before the city's first official crier announces the hour, you are awake and moving through the darkness. Your work tunic is exchanged for your best plain linen, and you carry a strange toolkit, not your grinding stones, but a pair of sharpened bronze shears, a collection of wide, shallow baskets made of woven reeds, and a length of clean, undyed sackcloth. You move through a Constantinople that few ever see, silent, shadowed, and profoundly empty. The occasional watchman's torch is a distant, bobbing star. The only sounds are your own footsteps echoing off the shuttered fronts of the shops and the distant, rhythmic wash of the sea against the city walls. You are not headed to your workshop. You are bound for the great palace itself, or more precisely, to the walled gardens that sprawl between the palace complex and the sea. You are part of a small, privileged guild delegation with a singular annual duty: the pre-dawn harvest of the first bloom of the Rosa Damascena, the damask rose, from the imperial gardens. This is not a right, it is a carefully negotiated concession. The Perfume Guild provides certain exclusive blends to the palace in exchange for access to these specific flowers, which are reputed, partly through legend, partly through actual superior cultivation, to possess a deeper, sweeter, and more tenacious scent than any other in the empire. As you approach the postern gate near the Bucolian harbor, you are met by a silent palace guardsman and a sleeper-looking imperial gardener holding a lamp. No words are exchanged. A nod. You are admitted into another world. The noise of the city vanishes, replaced by a dense, living quiet. The air is cooler, damp with dew, and so thick with the perfume of thousands of roses in bloom that it feels like drinking scented milk. It is almost overwhelming, a sensory assault of the purest kind. The gardens are laid out with geometric precision, long rows of bushes separated by gravel paths, with the darker shapes of cypress trees standing sentinel at intervals. In the faint pre-light, the roses are just pale, luminous blobs against the dark green. The gardener leads your small group to a specific quadrant, reserved for the guild's use. "One basket per bush," he murmurs, his voice hushed in the sacred stillness. "Only blooms that opened yesterday. Leave the buds. Snip cleanly." The work begins. It is methodical, humble, and requires a backache-inducing posture. You crouch beside a bush, your nose inches from the blossoms. In the near darkness, you must judge by touch as much as sight. Your fingers, sensitive from years of handling delicate materials, gently explore each flower. You seek the blooms that are fully open, their petals yielding but not yet loose. You find one, cup its weight in your palm, and bring the shears to the stem. The snick is startlingly loud in the hush. You lay the rose in your basket, a pool of darkness and scent. Then you move to the next. This is where you learn the true character of the rose, lessons no sack of dried petals could ever teach. As the sky pales from black to deep blue, then to a washed-out gray, the light reveals the variations. Not every bloom on the same bush is identical. Some, kissed by more sun on a particular side, carry a richer, almost fruity intensity. Others, from the bush's interior, are paler, more delicate, with a green, stem-like nuance. The famed imperial soil and the careful attention of the gardeners produce larger, more voluptuous flowers than you typically see, but they are still subject to the whims of nature. You find one rose with a faint brown edge on a petal, a sign of a hidden pest or a drop of acidic dew. You discard it. The standard is absolute. As your basket grows heavier, the scent clinging to your hands and clothes, you understand the other, unspoken purpose of this ritual. It is an exercise in controlled scarcity and in patience. You cannot rush. A torn petal releases its oils prematurely and will turn the harvest bitter. A carelessly snapped stem damages the bush. This is horticulture as a slow art, a partnership with the plant. The historian Procopius, in his secret history, grumbled about the immense cost of Justinian's building projects, but he never mentioned the silent army of gardeners who tended these roses, their work considered as vital to imperial prestige as any mosaic. The calm here is the calm of a deeply ingrained, seasonal rhythm, one that transcends the riots, the politics, the sieges that form the loud history of the city. The roses will bloom, and they must be harvested at this exact moment. It is a law older than the book of the epoch. The sky is now a proper dawn, a band of gold and pink over the Sea of Marmara. The palace walls begin to glow. With the light comes warmth, and with warmth, the roses seem to exhale their fragrance with renewed vigor. The air becomes drugging, magnificent. Your basket is nearly full. You stand, back creaking, and look down the long, perfect rows. For a moment, you are not a craftsman fulfilling an order, but a witness to a kind of beauty that is both cultivated and utterly wild. It is the empire's aesthetic in a microcosm, rigid order imposed upon natural abundance, with breathtaking results. The head gardener makes rounds, inspecting a basket here and there. He pauses at yours, picks up a single rose, inhales deeply at its base, and gives a curt, approving nod. It is the highest praise you will receive today. The harvest is gathered. You cover your basket with the sackcloth to protect the delicate blooms from the rising sun. The procession reverses, back through the postern gate, from the scented dream of the palace back into the awakening, garlic and fish-scented reality of the city. You carry your basket not with triumph, but with a profound sense of responsibility. These are not your roses. You are their temporary custodian. Your job now is to translate this transient, pre-dawn glory into something that can last in a sealed jar on a dressing table in the women's quarter of some aristocratic home, a whispered echo of an imperial garden most will never see. The weight is floral, but the duty feels immense. The calm of the harvest settles into a focused intensity. The real work, the preservation of a moment, begins as you walk back toward your workshop, the city now loud around you, but the scent of dawn and dew and damask rose still clinging to your clothes like a secret. The roses from the imperial gardens, now slightly wilted from their journey, are laid out on a clean marble slab in your workshop. They will not be ground. For this task you employ a more delicate, almost surgical method called enfleurage, reserved for the most precious blossoms. But that is not today's work. Today you face a different challenge, one that arrives not in a basket but on a sliver of polished ox bone. A servant from the household of the protovestiarios, the Grand Chamberlain, delivered it this morning. Scratched into the bone in minute, precise Greek is a list of ingredients and ratios. It is a recipe, or more accurately, a command. You are to recreate the megaloprepes, the magnificent, a legendary fragrance said to have been worn by Emperor Basil II a century ago. The original creator's name is lost to time, but his formula, or a version of it, resides in the palace archives. Your copy is a cipher. You hold the bone slip up to the light from the window. The ingredients are not surprising, but their proposed marriage is audacious. It calls for equal parts: rose, saffron, spikenard, and myrrh, bound in a base of aged omphacium, the oil from pressed unripe grapes. This is the alchemy. On paper it sounds like a clash of titans. The bright honeyed powder of saffron, the most expensive spice by weight in the world. The earthy, rooty, almost barnyard depth of spikenard from the Himalayas. The somber, medicinal bite of myrrh. And the luminous sweetness of your precious damask roses. Binding them is the omphacium, which is not a neutral oil but has a sharp green, almost aggressively vegetative scent of its own. To make this coherent, let alone magnificent, is an act of supreme technical confidence. It is also a political test. Success could mean a patron of immense power and wealth. Failure is not an option. You begin not with blending but with preparation. Each ingredient must be brought to its optimal state. The saffron threads, like fragile filaments of captured sunset, are too delicate to grind on stone. You use a porcelain mortar, gently rubbing them with a porcelain pestle until they become a vibrant, aromatic crimson powder that stains your fingertips and fills the air with a hay-like, subtly bitter sweetness. Historians still argue whether the Byzantine obsession with saffron in perfumery was purely for scent or if the enduring yellow stain it left on the skin was a desired visible marker of outrageous wealth. You suspect both. The spikenard root, looking like a bundle of hairy brown twigs, requires a different approach. You chop it finely with a small, sharp knife, then transfer it to a bronze mortar. The pounding releases its signature odor, deeply woody, musky with a damp, cellar-like quality that can in excess smell like a wet dog. The skill is to harness that animalic power without letting it dominate. You set it aside to mellow. The myrrh is easy. You have a jar of perfectly granulated tears ready. The roses. For this you will use the enfleurage method. You take a large flat wooden frame with a glass pane. On the glass, you have spread a thin, even layer of cold, purified exungia. With tweezers, you begin the painstaking work of plucking individual rose petals from their stems and pressing them face down into the fat. You cover the entire surface, creating a mosaic of magenta and pink. This frame will sit for a day. The fat will literally absorb the scent directly from the living petal. Tomorrow you will replace the wilted petals with fresh ones. You will do this for 10 days. The fat will become a chassis, saturated with the purest rose essence, unsullied by the heat of infusion. It is slow, absurdly labor-intensive, and the only way to do justice to the imperial harvest. But the true secret, lies in the omphacium. The recipe says aged. You go to your special storage shelf and select a small, sealed glass ampulla. You break the wax seal and pull the glass stopper. The scent that wafts out is not sharp and green, but complex, rounded, almost wine-like with a nutty depth. This oil is 5 years old. Over time, the aggressive vegetative notes have broken down, fermented in a sense, into something rich and profound. This is the magic trick. The aged oil will not fight the other ingredients. It will marry them, providing a round, deep bass note upon which the other scents can sing. With your components prepared, the blending can begin. This is not a matter of dumping everything into a pot. It is a sequential layering. In a glass beaker, you start with the aged omphacium. To this, you add the powdered myrrh, stirring for what seems like an hour until every granule is dissolved and the oil turns a pale, honeyed brown. This forms your base chord, resinous, deep, slightly sweet. Next, drop by agonizing drop, you add the spikenard-infused oil you prepared separately. You stir, you smell, you wait. You add another drop. This is the perilous part. Too much spikenard and the fragrance becomes feral, bestial. Too little and it lacks intrigue. You seek the point where it ceases to smell like spikenard and simply becomes a part of the deepening whole. Only when this base is perfectly balanced do you introduce the saffron. The powder does not fully dissolve but suspends in the oil, lending its radiant color and its golden, slightly metallic scent. Finally, you will add the rose chassis. But not today. Today you seal the beaker with a waxed cloth and set it in a cool, dark niche in your wall. It must rest. The ingredients need to argue, to reconcile, to become acquainted. Perfumery at this level is diplomacy. You are the mediator between volatile, temperamental personalities. The final act, the addition of the rose, will happen only when the base has achieved harmony. To rush it would be to create a cacophony. You clean your tools, the scent of the unfinished megaloprepes lingering on your hands. A promising, if currently discordant, murmur of what might be. This is the calm at the heart of the storm. The focused, patient orchestration of time and material. The politics of patronage demand a masterpiece, but the art itself demands silence, waiting, and a humble respect for the slow chemistry unfolding inside a sealed glass vessel. You will check it tomorrow and the next day with the detachment of a physician monitoring a fever. The creation belongs to the process now. Your role is merely to listen, and at the precise moment, to intervene with the final floral benediction. The wax seal on your master's certificate, pressed with the emblem of the Perfume Guild, a stylized lily crossed with an amphora, is your passport to a new kind of life. You have rented a stall, a Augusterian, in the covered arcade just off the main street of the perfume sellers. It is not large, perhaps 8 feet wide and twice as deep, open to the colonnaded walkway by a counter that folds down by day and bolts shut by night. The back wall is lined with shelves you built yourself, holding your stock. The location is everything. You are no longer in the secluded alley of pure production. You are in the bloodstream of commerce, and its pulse is relentless. Your first day as a shopkeeper begins not with the serene ritual of grinding, but with the gritty chore of sweeping. You clear the night's dust and the detritus of city life, a discarded fig stem, a broken pottery shard, a lost leather lace, from your patch of marble flooring. You unlock the wooden shutters that secure your goods, folding them down to form your counter. You arrange your wares with a merchant's calculated eye. In the front, the affordable staples, small clay ungüenteria of lavender and marjoram salve for headaches, jars of rosewater for the skin, sachets of crushed herbs for scenting linen chests. Further back, the more valuable items, glass balsamaria with drops of jasmine oil imported at great cost from the East, a few delicate blown glass bottles containing your own blends, like the rose and cinnamon nardinum. And in a locked box beneath the counter, your current masterpiece in waiting, the megalopreps, still mellowing in its beaker. That is not for casual display. Then, the city arrives. The arcade becomes a river of humanity. The sound is a lagged tapestry, the clatter of wooden cartwheels on stone, the sing-song calls of other vendors, fresh dates from Egypt. Fine leather belts. Mend your cracked pots. The drone of 100 conversations in Greek, Armenian, Slavic, and Arabic. A troop of imperial tax collectors marches past with grim efficiency, causing a temporary, resentful hush. A water seller clanks his cups, offering a drink from his barrel for a follis. The smell is no longer just your curated scents, but the great, democratic stink of Constantinople. Sweat, cooking oil, incense from the nearby church, the metallic tang of the nearby coppersmith's forge, the ever-present ghost of the fish market. Your first customer is not a noblewoman, but a baker from the next street over, his arms dusted with flour. He wants something for his wife, whose hands are raw from lye soap. You sell him a small pot of honey and almond ointment, a practical comfort. The transaction is quick, friendly. He pays in copper. This is the bedrock of your business. The next is a young priest, his black robes smelling of candle smoke. He needs pure frankincense tears for the liturgy, and he scrutinizes your stock with a theological intensity, holding granules up to the light to check for opacity and resin content. You bargain respectfully, settling on a price. He pays in a combination of small silver milliresian and a promise to mention your shop to the oikonomos of his church. Then comes the competition. A fellow perfumer from a stall 3 down, an older man named Alexandros, saunters over under the pretense of needing a loan of a measuring cup. His eyes sweep your shelves, cataloging your prices, your presentation. A fine location, he says, his tone neutral. Busy. Though the dust from the street can contaminate the finer oils if you're not careful. It's both advice and a subtle jab. You thank him for the warning. The guild rules prevent outright sabotage or price slashing, but a veneer of collegiality covers a deep current of rivalry. Information is currency. Alexandros might casually mention that the shipment of Syrian storax has been delayed due to bandits on the road, hoping you'll panic and buy from a more expensive source. You must learn to listen to the market's gossip as keenly as you listen to the scent of a dissolving resin. The rhythm of the day is set by this dance of observation and transaction. A group of wealthy Armenian merchants pass, their clothes of brilliant silk. They glance at your stall but do not stop. They are headed for the more established, famous perfumer at the arcade's entrance, a man who has a gilded sign and a reputation for serving the thematic asterisk court officials. You feel a pang, not of jealousy, but of ambition. You note what they are carrying. You listen to their conversation. One complains that the last civet paste he bought was flat. You file that away. Your moment with such clients will come, but not through flashiness. Through the quiet accumulation of reliability. The midday sun beats down on the arcade's roof, heating the air. You eat a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and an onion, purchased from a passing vendor, standing behind your counter. A slave girl from a prosperous household approaches, holding a tiny, empty glass bottle. "My mistress wishes a refill of the violet oil," she says, barely looking at you. You don't have a standard violet. You must create it on the spot, using orris root, which smells of violets, and a touch of macerated hyacinth to give it life. You do it quickly, expertly, while she taps her foot. You charge a fair price. She pays without a word and departs. It is an anonymous transaction, but it is a connection. If the mistress is pleased, the slave girl will return. As the afternoon wanes, the flow of people slows. You use the lull to restock, to make notes of what's sold, to clean your glassware. The calm of your workshop is gone, replaced by a different, more alert kind of focus. This is not the calm of creation, but the calm of the fisherman, watching the water, waiting for the right tug on the line. You have navigated the guild's laws, the customer's whims, the competitor's gaze, and the city's chaos, all without a major mishap. You lock your shutters as the evening lamps are lit in the arcade, the day's cacophony softening into a murmur. Your hands smell of copper coins, bread, and a dozen different scents. Your ears ring slightly from the noise. But you have a locked box under your counter, a few more coins in your strong box, and a fledgling place in the great, noisy, smelly, and utterly vital machine of Constantinople. You are, officially, in business. A woman enters your arcade stall, but not with the purposeful stride of a shopper. She moves slowly, her face pale and drawn beneath her headscarf, one hand pressed against her temple. She doesn't browse your scented oils. Instead, her eyes, shadowed with pain, scan the shelves until they land on the simple clay jars you keep at the very end of the counter, far from the rose oils and jasmine absolutes. "The hellebore salve," she says, her voice thin. "By head, it will not cease." You nod, your merchant's demeanor shifting seamlessly into that of an apothecary. You fetch the jar, remove the wax seal, and let her smell the sharp, medicinal, faintly unpleasant aroma. She grimaces in recognition. 3 applications a day, you instruct softly as you have 100 times before. Only on the temples, never near the eyes. She pays with a worn phallus coin and shuffles away, clutching the jar like a lifeline. This is the other half of your craft, the one the poetry and the palace commissions never mention. You are not just a purveyor of luxury, you are a distributor of relief. The line between perfume and medicine in your world is so faint as to be non-existent. The same herbs that scent a bath can, in different preparations, soothe a fever or disinfect a wound. Your workshop therefore is also a dispensary. After you close your shop shutter for the evening, the real work of the healer begins. You light a second, smaller brazier and set a copper kettle of water to boil. From a locked cabinet you retrieve your materia medica. Jars of dried wormwood for fevers, powdered willow bark for pain, crushed mint for digestion, and more sinister things like the powdered hellebore root, a powerful migraine remedy that is also a deadly poison in the wrong dose. Handling these requires a different kind of calm. The calm of a bomb maker, where precision is the only thing standing between remedy and catastrophe. You compound a batch of theriac, the legendary all-purpose antidote and prophylactic. It is a ridiculous, sprawling recipe, sometimes containing over 60 ingredients, including opium, viper's flesh, and a dozen rare spices. Yours is a simpler, guild-approved version for common sale. As you grind dried skink root, a type of lizard believed to be beneficial for the skin, you reflect on the strange duality. The rose water you sell to a patrician's wife for her complexion is, in essence, a mild astringent. The frankincense you sell to the priest is, according to Galenic medicine, a warming substance good for clearing phlegm. The customers may buy them for status or piety, but they are using them whether they know it or not as medicine. Historians still argue whether the pervasive use of scented medicaments in Byzantium represented a sophisticated, holistic understanding of wellness or a desperate, fragrant placebo in the face of terrifyingly limited medical science. You don't think in such terms. You see the woman's headache fade. That is evidence enough. But the spiritual dimension is even more profound. A messenger arrives from the deacon of the Church of the Theotokos near the docks. He needs a large quantity of livinotos, the special incense blend for the upcoming feast day. This is not a commercial transaction. It is a sacred commission. You clear your main workbench with reverence. The recipe is canonical. Pure frankincense tears, a specific grade of myrrh from Arabia Felix, a touch of cassia bark, and a small amount of costly onycha, a operculum shell that, when burned, releases a marine animalic scent believed to drive away evil spirits. As you blend them in a large bronze bowl, the act feels different from making a perfume. You are not creating a personal adornment, but crafting the very atmosphere of prayer. The scent is meant to rise, like the petitions of the faithful, to heaven. Must be flawless, consistent, and pure. No cheap pine resin as a filler. This incense will fill the vast domed space of the church, merging with the chant and the candle smoke, shaping the experience of the divine for thousands. The weight of that is a quiet, solemn pressure. Later, a wealthy merchant from the quarter comes to you with a private, anxious request. He is being plagued by nightmares. A soothsayer has told him a rival has cursed him. He wants a protective amulet and a fumigant to cleanse his home. You do not sell magic. The church frowns upon it, and the guild forbids explicit claims of sorcery. But you sell the tools of ritual. You prepare a pouch of strongly scented, purifying herbs, rue, rosemary, and sage. You also make a dense cake of slow-burning incense heavy with camphor and cedarwood, whose smoke is believed to purify the air of malefic influences. Burn this in every room, you tell him, your voice low and reassuring. And keep the sachet under your pillow. You sell him calm in a tangible, aromatic form. Whether it works by driving away spirits or simply by convincing his anxious mind that he has taken powerful action, you do not know. But he leaves looking relieved, clutching his aromatic defenses. You lock away your medicinals and your sacred resins. The workshop smells now like a strange cathedral hospital. This is the full scope of your craft. From the vanity of the court to the pain of the commoner. From the collective ecstasy of the liturgy to the private terror of a dark bedroom. Your calm is the calm of the crossroads, where the physical, the spiritual, and the superstitious all meet, seeking solace in the power of scent. You are a craftsman, a chemist, a priest of the olfactory, and a dealer in hope. And as you douse the braziers, the lingering smell in the air is not one single thing, but a testament to the countless quiet human needs that find their way day after day to your door. The object sits on your workbench, cradled in a bed of straw, looking as alien and delicate as a dragonfly's wing. It is a glass alembic, a gift, or perhaps a challenge, from a Syrian merchant who owed your master a favor. The apparatus consists of 3 parts, a spherical body called the cucurbit, where you place the material to be distilled, a head that fits over it, with a long, tapering spout called the beak, and a receiver flask to catch what drips out. It is a tool of transmutation, promising to unlock the very soul of a substance. You've heard the theories, the whispers from the Arab scholars and the lingering echoes of Alexandria's alchemists. This is not infusion, not enfleurage. This is something new, the capture of a flower's breath. You decide to start with something simple, something you know intimately, rose water. You have a basket of good, but not imperial quality, damask roses. You carefully separate the petals, discarding the white heels which can impart bitterness. You place them in the cucurbit and cover them with clean rainwater. You assemble the glass pieces, the joints sealed with a paste of wheat flour and egg white to make them airtight. It feels less like perfumery and more like a precarious scientific experiment. You place the cucurbit over a small, precisely controlled bed of coals. Then, you wait. For a long time, nothing happens. The water heats. Steam begins to rise inside the bulbous glass, fogging it. You watch, mesmerized. The steam, carrying the volatile aromatic compounds from the petals, rises into the cooler dome of the alembic's head. There, it condenses back into liquid, running down the inner curve of the glass to gather in the beak. A single, clear droplet forms, swells, and falls with a soft plink into the waiting receiver flask. Then another. And another. The liquid collecting is not oil. It is water. But as you lean close, the scent that rises from the receiver is so profoundly, shockingly pure that it momentarily stops your breath. It is the scent of a living rose, but intensified, abstracted, freed from the weight of the petal. It is the idea of a rose, captured in a falling tear. This is hydrosol, flower water. And it is revolutionary. The process, a form of distillation, is not entirely new. The Byzantines likely inherited and refined it from earlier traditions. But holding this glass full of fragrant water feels like holding the future. The applications are immediate. Rose water is a sublime skin tonic, a flavoring for sweets and wines, a delicate perfume in its own right. But your mind races further. What of orange blossoms? Of lavender? Of herbs? You could capture the cooling essence of peppermint, the calming spirit of chamomile. This alembic allows you to bypass the oil, the fat, the slow infusion, and go straight to the heart of the plant. The next experiment is more ambitious. You try the same process with rose petals alone, no water. You pack the cucurbit tightly, applying even gentler heat. This is riskier. The petals can scorch in an instant, ruining everything. You watch like a hawk, adjusting the coals with bronze tongs. The process is slower. A different liquid condenses in the receiver. This one has a slight oily viscosity, and it floats on top of a little water that also comes over. This is the attar, the essential oil. The yield is pitifully small, a thin golden film from an entire basket of petals. But its power is godlike. One drop on a scent strip fills the entire workshop with a rose scent of such piercing, tenacious beauty it makes your previous infusions smell like mere memories of flowers. This is the soul, indeed. It is also, you realize instantly, a currency of unimaginable value. You spend days in a quiet fever of discovery, forgetting your shop, your commissions, even meals. You distill lavender, producing a clear, sharp oil that smells like the herb's very spirit. You try it with cloves, creating a pungent, burning essence that numbs your tongue when you dare to taste a minuscule drop. The alembic becomes your world. The calm of routine is replaced by the electric calm of the pioneer, each distillation a journey into uncharted sensory territory. You learn that not all plants give up their secrets easily. Some, like jasmine, are too delicate. Their fragrance is destroyed by the heat. They require a different, more complex process called enfleurage with fats, which you already know. But for the robust ones, roses, herbs, spices, the glass alembic is a key to a hidden kingdom. One evening, as you clean the delicate glassware with meticulous care, you consider the implications. This technology will change your craft. It will create new products, new markets, new possibilities for fraud. A single drop of true attar could stretch a gallon of cheap oil. It will also, inevitably, provoke debate within the guild. Is this alchemy? Is it proper perfumery? Historians will one day call this apparatus a precursor to the chemical revolution. But to you, tonight, it is simply a beautiful, fragile machine that turns flowers into ghosts and ghosts into gold. You wrap it carefully in its protective straw and hide it in a locked chest. This knowledge is power, and in Constantinople, power must be managed, revealed slowly, like the gradual, perfect drip of rose essence from a glass beak into a waiting vessel. The man who enters your stall as the afternoon crowds thin is not like the local merchants. His skin is weathered to the texture of old saddle leather, tanned by deserts you've only heard of in fragments. His robes are of good but travel-stained wool, dyed with the distinctive reddish hue of Anatolian madder. He carries with him not just the dust of the road, but a complex, shifting aroma that tells his story before he speaks. The smoke of campfires, the sweat of animals, the dry, mineral smell of endless steppes, and beneath it all, the tantalizing, precious notes of his trade. He is a Karwan merchant, a caravan master, and his eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scan your shelves with an appraising, professional indifference. He's not here to buy. You are the one they say has a steady hand with the rose attar, he says, his Greek accented but fluent, a language of commerce, not poetry. I work with roses, you reply, guardedly non-committal. He gives a short nod, then sets a small, iron-bound chest on your counter. The sound is a solid thunk. He doesn't open it immediately. Instead, he begins to talk, not of price, but of provenance. This, he says, tapping the lid, comes from beyond the Oxus River. A high, cold plateau where the goats graze on wild thyme and mountain flowers. The herdsmen collect the nodules from the rocks where the beasts have rubbed. He flips the clasp and opens the chest. Inside, nestled in raw silk, is a lump about the size of your fist. It is grey, waxy, and mottled, resembling a weathered stone. It looks profoundly unimpressive. But as the lid lifts, the scent that escapes is oceanic, profound, and utterly singular, salty, animalic, with a deep, sweet, woody background that seems to evolve even as you smell it. Ambergris. True, aged ambergris, washed ashore on some distant coast, found by a lucky fisherman, sold and resold across a continent until it reached this chest. It is worth, by weight, several times its equivalent in gold. You maintain your composure, though your perfumer's soul is humming. You know its power. A sliver of this, dissolved in the finest oil, acts as a fixative, binding the volatile top notes of a perfume to the skin, making them last for days instead of hours. It doesn't scent so much as it deepens, adding a mysterious, magnetic warmth. And the other, you ask, your voice level. From a pouch at his belt, he produces a smaller, intricately carved horn container. He uncorks it and tilts it. A dark, granular paste, like damp coffee grounds, slides into a dish you quickly provide. This scent is more aggressive, more immediately animal, musky, urinous, but with a shocking, sweet leathery dry down. Musk. Not the weak, diluted tinctures you sometimes get from local traders, but the raw, dried secretion from the gland of the Tibetan musk deer, a creature that lives in forests so remote they might as well be the moon. It is even more valuable than the ambergris. The caravan has just delivered a king's ransom in olfactory form to your humble counter. The bargaining is a silent, ritualistic dance. You do not speak of price first. You must authenticate. You take a sliver of the ambergris and warm it between your thumb and forefinger. True ambergris will soften slightly and release its scent more powerfully. A fake of wax and dung will melt and stink. It softens. The scent blooms, becoming almost floral. It is genuine. For the musk, you take a single grain and place it on a hot silver spoon. It should not burn with a black, acrid smoke but should vaporize into a rich, diffusive aroma. It does. The merchant watches your tests with approval. You know your craft. He respects that. Now, the haggling begins. He names a price in solidi that is astronomical. You counter with half, not because you expect to get it, but because you must. You cite the risks of your trade, the guild taxes, the uncertainty of the market. He counters with the dangers of his, the bandits in the passes, the corrupt border officials, the months of travel, the sandstorms that swallowed 3 of his camels. You mention the new distilling techniques that might reduce the need for such powerful fixatives, a bold bluff. He scoffs, but you see a flicker of doubt. He knows technology changes things. You settle, after an hour of circular, polite, and intensely stressful conversation, on a price that leaves your strong box nearly empty but secures you a quantity of both treasures that will last for years, used in pinhead-sized portions. The coins change hands, weighed on your scale against his own set of weights, a necessary check for both parties. Historians still argue whether the Silk Road's greatest gift to Byzantium was silk, spices, or ideas. But for you, in this moment, it is this. The raw, untamed essence of distant wilderness, now sitting in 2 small containers on your workbench. As he leaves, his business concluded, the merchant pauses. The world is changing, he says, almost as an afterthought. The roads to the east grow more troubled. The ships from Venice and Genoa in the west bring other goods, other smells. This, he gestures to the now empty chest, may become harder to find. Use it well. It's not a warning, just a statement of fact from a man who reads the wind and the political landscape as others read scrolls. You are left alone with your acquisitions. The scent in your stall is now a complex map of unimaginable journeys. You hold a piece of a Himalayan forest and a fragment of an unknown ocean. Your calm is the calm of a deep-sea diver who has just surfaced with pearls, exhilarated and spent, holding a piece of a world you will never see, but whose essence you will now weave into the scented identity of an empire. The summons arrives not on ox bone, but on a small, perfect square of purple-dyed vellum, sealed with a glob of red wax impressed with a double-headed eagle. It is delivered by a palace silentiarius, a kind of usher, whose face is as expressionless as a statue's. He waits while you read it. The message is brief, written in a formal looping hand. The Basilisa Zoe Porphyrogenitor requires your service at the 3rd hour after dawn 2 days hence. Present yourself at the gate of the Skyla. It is not a request. Your heart for a moment does something between a leap and a stumble. The Empress Zoe. At 70 she is a living legend. A princess born in the Purple Chamber, the wife of 3 emperors. A woman whose life has been a labyrinth of power, piety, and poison. Her interest in perfumes is well known. Her private chambers are said to be a forest of aromatic plants. To be summoned by her is the pinnacle of professional recognition. It is also a plunge into the most dangerous waters in the world. On the appointed day you wear your finest, simplest tunic. You bring no tools, only your knowledge and your nose. The gate of the Skyla is a lesser entrance, used by servants and specialized craftsmen. You are scrutinized, your name checked against a list, and admitted into a series of courtyards that feel like a progression through increasingly rarefied air. The public bustle of the city fades, replaced by the soft crunch of gravel under the sandals of hurrying eunuchs, the distant murmur of a liturgical chant from the palace chapel, and the overwhelming, curated scent of wealth. Here the roses are not harvested, they are architecture. Jasmine vines cascade over marble trellises. Lemon trees in giant terracotta pots release their sharp perfume. The air is so clean, so deliberately fragrant it feels thin. You are led to a small, sun-drenched annex off the main imperial apartments. Not a grand hall but a personal space. The room is a testament to botanical obsession. Shelves hold hundreds of ceramic pots with thriving herbs. Bunches of drying flowers hang from the ceiling. On a table of porphyry, a bewildering array of glass vessels, mortars, and jars is laid out. A perfumer's workshop fit for a goddess. And then she enters. Empress Zoe is older than you imagined, her face a network of fine lines, but her eyes are a startling clear blue and they miss nothing. She is dressed not in overwhelming imperial regalia, but in a richly embroidered gown of Tyrian purple, a color so profound it seems to drink the light. A heavy necklace of pearls and sapphires rests on her chest. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace. He does not greet you. He goes straight to the point. "They tell me you understand the soul of a flower," she says, her voice husky, measured. "I wish you to create a fragrance for me. Not a copy of something old. Something new. It must be enduring, like memory. And it must be mine alone. This is the challenge and the trap. A unique fragrance for the most powerful woman in the empire. Success could make you. Its failure would not be forgotten. And its uniqueness must be absolute. If a whiff of it is ever detected on another, the consequences are unthinkable." She watches as you approach the table. You are being tested from the first moment. You glance over the materials she has assembled. It is a breathtaking collection. Vials of rose attar from her own gardens, sandalwood oil from India so aged it is almost syrupy, a tiny pot of the finest saffron, crushed sea pearls for their luminescent powder, a vanity believed to brighten the skin, and a small crystal flask containing a clear liquid. You pick it up, uncork it cautiously and inhale. The scent is clean, citrusy, but with a resinous, almost pine-like depth. It is the distilled essence of the rare Cedrus libani, the cedar of Lebanon. It is astonishing. "What do you propose?" she asks, settling onto a cushioned stool, her eyes never leaving your hands. Your mind races, but your training imposes calm. You think of her. A woman who has seen empires rise and fall, husbands come and go, who has survived plots and presided over golden ages. She does not need a simple, pretty floral. She needs a monument. You begin to speak, thinking aloud as a craftsman does. "The foundation must be the aged sandalwood," you say. "It is warm, stable, long-lasting, like history itself." You measure a small amount into a clean glass beaker. To this we add the cedar, not for its top note, but to run through the heart like the beams of a great hull, strong, clean, unscented by petty things. You add a drop, then another, stirring. The blend begins to smell of ancient, sacred spaces. "The rose attar will be the light," you continue, "but not a summer rose. A rose at dusk, when the scent turns deeper, more mysterious." You add a minuscule amount. The floral note doesn't sit on top of the woods. It weaves through them. "The saffron," you say, taking the smallest pinch of the crimson powder between your fingers, "will be the gold thread. The color of power, of the porphyry you were born in. It will give warmth and a subtle, spicy glow." You stir it in. The mixture is becoming complex, profound. She is silent, watching the transformation. You sense her approval not in a smile, but in her unwavering attention. Then you reach for the powdered pearls. "And this," you say, "will be the final secret. It will add not a scent, but a feeling, a cool, luminous quality on the skin like moonlight on marble." You blend it in. The fragrance in the beaker is now a masterpiece in potentia, woody, resinous, floral, golden, cool. It is regal, untouchable, and deeply personal. You let her smell it. She closes her eyes, inhaling slowly. For a long moment she says nothing. The silence in the sunlit room is absolute. Then she opens her eyes. Yes, she says, a single word of imperial decree. You will make it. You will label it Zoe's Resolve. And you will tell no one of its composition on pain of death. You bow your head. The commission is yours. The danger is now a permanent companion. As you are escorted out, the scent of your own creation seems to cling to you, a glamorous and terrifying perfume. You have navigated the pinnacle of patronage. You have pleased an empress. The calm you feel walking back to your shop is the calm of a tightrope walker who has just crossed the most famous chasm in the world. Elated, exhausted, and knowing one gust of wind, one misstep, could still end everything. Your workshop now holds a secret more valuable than any ambergris, and more volatile than any chemical in your alembic. The perfume, now named Zoe's Resolve by Imperial Fiat, sits in its final blend within a sealed glass arybellos, a small, spherical flask. It is complete, but it is naked. To present it to the Empress in this plain vessel would be an insult, a failure of the total art. The container, you know, is not just a vessel. It is the prologue to the scent, the visual and tactile promise of what lies within. For this, you need an artist of a different kind. You wrap the arybellos in linen and make your way to the glassmakers' quarter, a district near the harbor where the air smells of wood ash, soda, and the fierce, constant heat of the furnaces. The workshop of Photios the glassblower is a cave of fire and breath. The heat hits you like a wall as you enter, a dry, radiating force that makes the perfumer's gentle warmth of your brazier feel like a memory. In the center, a furnace roars, its more glowing orange. Photios, a burly man with forearms corded like old rope and eyes perpetually squinted against the glare, is at work. He holds a long, hollow iron blowpipe, its end a glowing, molten gather of honey-colored glass. He puts the pipe to his lips, his cheeks inflating, and blows with a steady, controlled exhalation. The molten blob swells, a bubble of captured breath growing in the firelight. With practiced, almost casual flicks of his wrist, he rolls the pipe on the arms of his wooden chair, shaping the sphere. It is a dance of man, metal, and liquid stone. You wait until he has transferred the vessel to a pontil rod for finishing. He nods at you, wiping sweat from his brow with a soot-stained cloth. "You're the perfumer," he says, his voice gravelly from years of inhaling furnace fumes. "The one with the imperial commission." News travels fast in the guild networks. You unwrap your glass arybellos and explain what you need, a bottle worthy of an empress's private fragrance. Not just functional, but symbolic. Photios listens, his eyes on the small, plain flask. He understands. He takes you to a shelf where examples of his work sit cooling. There are vessels of all kinds, sturdy green glass jugs for wine, delicate drinking cups with coiled threads of colored glass, and, most relevantly, perfume bottles. Some are simple teardrop shapes. Others are more elaborate, shaped like miniature amphorae or grapes. He picks up a small bottle, its glass so thin it seems it might shatter at a thought. "This is the quality," he says. "But for her, we must think of the meaning." You discuss ideas. A simple, elegant elongated form, suggesting dignity. A color? Pure, clear glass is most prized, showing the liquid's hue. But perhaps a subtle tint? A drop of gold powder in the melt could give it a faint, sunny glow. The stopper is critical. It must seal perfectly to prevent the precious volatiles from escaping. He suggests a stopper of carved rock crystal, with a ground glass fit so exact it will sigh when pulled. You agree. But then Photios has an inspiration. The double-headed eagle, he murmurs. The symbol of the empire. East and west. We cannot put the imperial seal on it, that is forbidden. But we can suggest it. His plan is ingenious. He will create the bottle with two small, delicate handles at the neck. When viewed from one angle, they are just decorative handles. But when the bottle is held, the user's fingers will curl around them, and the silhouette, with the elongated body and the flared handles, will subtly, unconsciously, echo the shape of the eagle with its wings spread. It is a secret homage, a nod to power that only the initiated might perceive. It is perfect. The creation takes days. You visit the workshop repeatedly, watching the birth of the vessel. Photios gathers the glass, blows the basic form, then, with a set of tiny bronze tools, jacks, shears, and pincers, he manipulates the still pliable material like a sculptor. He attaches two blobs of glass and draws them out into elegant, wing-like handles. He flames the rim to perfect smoothness. The final act is the most nerve-wracking, annealing. The finished bottle is placed in a special, cooling oven where the temperature drops slowly over an entire day. If cooled too quickly, the glass will develop invisible stresses and shatter at the slightest touch. This slow, gentle solidification is the secret to its strength. When it is finally ready, Photios presents it to you. It is a masterpiece of translucent art. The glass is flawless, with a faint golden luminescence from the infused gold. It catches the light like a captured sunbeam. The shape is sublime, both austere and graceful. And yes, when you hold it, your fingers on the handles, the suggestion of the eagle is there, a ghost in the form. You pay Photios a sum that makes your transaction with the caravan merchant seem modest, but you do not begrudge a single coin. He has not just made a container, he has made a part of the perfume itself. Back in your workshop, you perform the final, sacred transfer. Using a tiny glass funnel, you decant Zoe's resolve from its plain aribalos into the new bottle. The golden-tinged liquid fills the vessel, glowing from within. You fit the rock crystal stopper. It slides in with a soft, satisfying snick of absolute precision. The object is now complete. The scent and its vessel are one. Historians still argue whether the famed Byzantine luxury was defined more by the object or its contents, the craftsmanship or the material. Holding this bottle, you know the answer. It is the inseparable unity of both. The calm you feel is the calm of completion. You have attended to every detail, from the Empress's whims to the molecular dance of scent, to the fiery birth of its glass home. You wrap the bottle in purple silk, ready for delivery. It is no longer a product of your workshop. It is a tiny, perfect empire in a bottle. The first sign is not a sight but a smell. You are walking to your stall in the arcade when a new acrid note cuts through the usual morning tapestry of bread and sea and incense. It is the smell of fear distilled and burned. People are burning juniper branches and pungent thyme on street corners, their smoke thick and blue in the still air. Then you see the chalk marks, crude crosses scrawled on the doors of houses. Quarantine. The word ripples through the crowd in hushed, terrified tones. Plague. Not the vague, distant sickness that always lingers at the edges of a city of a million souls, but the real, historical horror. The bubonic plague returning like a vengeful season. It begins in the crowded tenements near the docks, but it is spreading, a creeping shadow in the sunlight. The calm of commerce shatters. Your arcade is nearly empty. Those who do pass do so quickly, their faces covered with cloth, their eyes wide. The wealthy have retreated to their country villas. The shopkeepers who remain are boarding up their stalls. But your profession does not allow you to flee. In fact, it calls you to the front line, armed not with medicine but with scent. The distinction between perfumer and apothecary, always blurry, now vanishes entirely. The air people believe is the vector of the disease. Miasma. Bad air. Your job is to cleanse it. You close your perfume stall. There is no market for rose attar or jasmine absolutes now. Instead, you open your workshop as a dispensary of desperate aromatics. Your first customers are not individuals, but representatives of the great households and the few remaining churches. Their requests are urgent, identical. Vinegar of the Four Thieves. The legendary macabre prophylactic. The recipe is gruesome in its optimism. It claims that during a past plague, condemned thieves robbed the dead with impunity by bathing in a special vinegar. You make it by the gallon. Into great jars of strong wine vinegar, you steep massive handfuls of every pungent antiseptic herb you have. Wormwood, rue, sage, rosemary, lavender, and great quantities of crushed garlic. The smell in your workshop becomes eye-watering. A brutal, aggressive funk that declares war on the very concept of miasma. You sell it by the amphora. Next are the fumigants. You compound cakes for burning in braziers. These are not the sweet church incenses. These are assaults. You grind frankincense and myrrh not for their piety, but for their powerful resinous smoke. You add chunks of bitter camphor, strips of aromatic cedarwood, and handfuls of dried hyssop. When burned, they produce a thick, medicinal smoke meant to scour the air in sick rooms and purify homes. You work until your hands are stained black and your throat is raw from the vapors. The gentle art of subtlety is dead. This is perfumery as a blunt instrument of survival. A priest from a poor parish comes, his face gaunt. He does not want fumigants for the living, but something to mask the smell of the dead piling up faster than they can be buried. You give him a strong blend of cheap styrax and cassia to burn, a sweet, cloying smoke to fight the unspeakable. He has no money. You take a small, tarnished icon from him in trade. Feels like a transaction from the end of the world. The most heartbreaking requests are the personal ones. A young man, his face pale, brings you a scrap of his wife's dress. She is in a marked house, he whispers. Can you make something she can wear? Something to protect her? You have no such magic. But you make a strong version of the plague vinegar, infused with extra rosemary for hope, and a small sachet of cloves and cinnamon to press to the nose. Tell her to think of spicy wine, you say, your voice gentle. Tell her to think of feasts. It is a pathetic defense against the Black Death, but it is all you have. He clutches the items and runs, a man clinging to fragrant straws. The city becomes a ghost of itself. The sounds of industry and trade are gone, replaced by the occasional cry of a mourner, the distant chant of a burial service, the crackle of a cleansing fire. You sleep in your workshop, wary of carrying anything back to your home. You eat what you can scavenge. Your calm is no longer the calm of artistry, but the grim, exhausted calm of the grave digger, performing a necessary, horrifying duty. Historians still argue whether these aromatic defenses had any real effect on the transmission of plague, or if they simply provided a psychological lifeline, a sense of agency in the face of an incomprehensible terror. As you watch the smoke from your fumigant cakes curl toward the ceiling, you don't care about the debate. You are selling the idea of clean air, the ritual of fight. In a time when every breath feels like a gamble, that idea is worth more than all the ambergris in the treasury. One evening, a palace eunuch arrives, his face covered by a scented cloth. The empress has not fled. She remains in the city, a symbol of stability. He orders a vast quantity of your strongest fumigant cakes for the palace complex. It is an imperial endorsement of your grim new product line. As you pack the order, you realize your craft has been transformed. You are no longer a creator of beauty, but a manufacturer of aromatic barricades. The plague will pass as all things do. But the memory of this time, the smell of terror and vinegar and desperate, smoky prayers, will linger in the stones of your workshop and in the practiced, hurried motions of your hands, long after the last chalk-marked cross is scrubbed from the last door. The plague's shadow finally lifts, receding like a foul tide. The chalk crosses are scrubbed from doors, the juniper fires die out, and people, pale and thinner, begin to tentatively reclaim the streets. Commerce, that stubborn lifeblood of Constantinople, starts its faltering pulse again. You reopen your stall in the arcade, displaying your perfumes once more beside the now dwindling stock of plague vinegars. The air smells of hope and loss, a strange, sharp cocktail. It is in this fragile new normal that the summons comes. Not from the palace, but from the headquarters of your own guild. The meeting is held in the hall of the Merepsikoi, a modest but well-appointed room above a prosperous perfumery near the Forum of Constantine. You enter to find the 5 senior masters of the guild seated behind a long table of polished cypress wood. Their expressions are not hostile, but they are grave, etched with the weariness of the recent crisis. Alexandros, your competitor from the arcade, is among them. He does not meet your eye. In the center of the table sits a single object, one of your small, glass bottles of rosewater, the kind you distilled yourself during your fevered experiments with the alembic. The proestos, the guild president, a man named Theodore with a magnificent white beard, speaks first. His voice is calm, procedural. You are called before this council, he begins, on a matter of potential infringement. Guild Code, Section 14, Clause 3. All raw materials of a value exceeding 5 solidi per litra must be sourced from the registered merchants of the Deutera market or from guild-approved caravans, with a certificate of origin. He pauses, letting the legalese hang in the air. It has been brought to our attention that the rose attar used in this, he taps the bottle, and by extension in several of your higher value blends, was produced in-house, from roses of unspecified origin. You feel a cold clarity wash over you. This is not about the roses. The roses were from your own legitimate sources, mostly from Macedonia. This is about the process. The alembic. The distillation. They have no law against the tool itself, it is too new. So they are attacking the weakest link in your chain, provenance. By making your own attar, you bypass the registered merchants who sell imported floral oils. You have, in their eyes, disrupted the economic ecosystem the guild was created to protect. The roses were purchased from Georgios of Thrace, a registered florist. You state, your voice steady. I have the receipts. You produce a wax tablet from your pouch, showing the transactions. Theodore examines it, then passes it along. The source of the roses is not in question, he says. The issue is the transformation of a registered raw material into a new, concentrated product without guild oversight or taxation. You have created, for personal sale, a substance that normally would pass through the hands of a licensed oil preparer. You have blurred the lines. Alexandros finally speaks, his tone not angry, but collegially concerned. It creates an imbalance, you see. If every perfumer begins distilling their own attars, what becomes of the oil merchants? What becomes of the price standards we have worked centuries to maintain? Our calm is built on order. Your new tool, it introduces chaos. This is the true trial. It is not a court of law, but a court of tradition. They are not accusing you of making a bad product. They fear you are making a too good product, too efficiently. The guild's purpose is to ensure quality and fairness, but also to control the pace of change, to cushion the market from shocks. Your alembic is a shockwave. You choose your defense carefully. You do not speak of revolution or superior quality. You speak of necessity. Honored masters, you begin. During the plague, the registered merchants fled or died. Their supply chains were broken. I had this tool. I used it to produce rosewater and strong herbal essences for fumigants and vinegars. These were sold not for luxury, but for public health, at cost or given freely to the poor parishes. The guild's purpose is the welfare of the city and our craft. Was I to let the tool sit idle while people believed scent was their only shield? It's a deft pivot. You reframe your innovation not as economic threat, but as civic duty during an emergency. You see a flicker in Theodore's eyes. The other masters murmur. They had all profited, in their way, from the plague, selling their own fumigants at inflated prices. Your claim of selling at cost pricks their conscience, or at least their pride. The debate that follows is long and circular. They cite precedents. You cite necessity. They speak of the danger of setting a precedent. You speak of the tool as a supplement, not a replacement. Historians still argue whether Byzantine guilds were engines of economic stagnation or essential protectors of quality and social stability. In this room, you are living the argument. Finally, Theodore raises a hand for silence. The council finds no explicit violation of the code as it is currently written, he announces. The tension in your shoulders eases a fraction. However, he continues, the creation of novel, concentrated essences does fall into a gray area. Therefore, we rule thus: you may continue to use your distillation apparatus. But any attar or essential oil produced for sale must be submitted to the guild for quality assessment and will be subject to a new, special tariff of 15% of its market value, to be paid into the guild's welfare fund. Furthermore, you will provide a demonstration of this apparatus to the senior masters, so that we may understand its principles and consider amendments to the code. It is a masterful political solution. They have not banned you. They have taxed and co-opted you. They have turned your innovation into a revenue stream and a subject for their study. You have won the right to continue, but at a price and under their watchful eye. You bow in acceptance. The calm that returns to you as you leave the hall is complex. It is the calm of having survived an institutional ambush. The calm of knowing your secret is out, but contained. The calm of understanding that in this world, even the scent of a rose must navigate a labyrinth of law, tradition, and the delicate, jealous pride of your fellow craftsmen. You walk back to your workshop, not as a rebel, but as a regulated pioneer. The alembic is no longer just a tool. It is now a diplomatic entity, a registered citizen of the guild's ancient, scented republic. The week begins with a celebration. A messenger from a prosperous silk merchant's house brings a bolt of fine cloth as a deposit and a request, a bridal perfume for his daughter, to be ready in 3 days. The mood in the household, he says, is all joy and fluttering nerves. The scent must reflect it, youthful, bright, auspicious, a herald of new beginnings. You accept the commission, and your mind turns to the appropriate palette. Not the deep, resinous weight of an imperial blend, but something that sparkles. You decide on a theme of citrus and flower. You use your alembic to produce a small quantity of exquisite orange blossom water, the very scent of innocence and joy. To this, you add a top note of distilled essence of bergamot, a rare, bitter citrus that provides a thrilling, green lift. The heart will be jasmine, not the oil, which can be too heavy, but an enfluage of the petals in a light oil, capturing their narcotic, starry sweetness. A base of just a whisper of vanilla-infused honey, for warmth and the promise of sweetness to come. You blend it carefully, creating a fragrance that is like laughter caught in a bottle, effervescent, tender, full of light. You deliver it to the merchant's house on the morning of the wedding. You can hear the music and the happy chaos from the courtyard. You are paid handsomely, with extra coins for the good omen, the messenger says with a smile. You walk away, the sound of lyres and joy fading behind you, a creator of happiness, however fleeting. 2 days later, the atmosphere in your workshop is shattered by a different messenger. This one is dressed in somber gray, his face composed into a mask of formal grief. It is from the same silk merchant's house. The bride's grandmother, the matriarch of the family, has died quite suddenly in her sleep. The funeral is tomorrow. They require a funeral incense, and they require it from you, as you have just served the family in joy. It is fitting you serve them in sorrow. The juxtaposition is brutal, a reminder of life's fierce, swift tides. You send the messenger away with assurances and close your stall. Now, you must craft for eternity. The requirements are opposite. Where the bridal perfume was bright and volatile, the funeral incense must be slow, profound, and linear. It must burn with a steady, solemn smoke, and its scent must speak of permanence, memory, and release. You clear your workbench of all traces of citrus and flower. You bring out the somber resins. Frankincense, for prayer and purification. Myrrh, for mourning and embalming. A rich, dark styrax, for its sweet, balsamic depth that resembles a memory of life's comforts. And, because she was a woman of faith and wealth, a small portion of the precious kaifi you reserve for the richest clients, a complex Egyptian blend of raisins, wine, honey, and 16 herbs and resins, whose smoke is said to guide the soul. You work in silence, your movements deliberate, reverent. You grind the frankincense and myrrh together, the two resins whose histories are eternally intertwined. You add the powdered styrax. You incorporate the kaifi last, binding the mixture with a few drops of honeyed wine until it forms a dense, aromatic paste. You form it into cones and set them to dry on a slate in the cool, dark corner of your workshop. These will burn for a long time, a steady, fragrant companion to the psalms and tears. The day of the funeral, you deliver the incense personally to the family's home, now draped in black. The same courtyard that rang with music now echoes with the slow, mournful chant of the three noes. You see the bride, her joyous silks exchanged for black wool, her face pale beneath her veil. You hand the box of incense cones to the steward. No words are exchanged beyond the necessary. The transaction is complete. As you walk away, the scent of your own creation seems to follow you, the smell of sanctity and finality. That evening, back in your workshop, you are exhausted not in body, but in spirit. The cycle of the week has been a microcosm of your entire profession, compressed into a few days. You have crafted for the zenith of a human life and for its conclusion. The tools were the same, the mortars, the scales, your knowledge. The intent was what changed. One scent was an invitation, an opening door. The other was a veil, a closing curtain. Historians often catalogue the vast trade in incense for the dead in Byzantium, but rarely do they pause to consider the perfumer who must pivot from one profound human ritual to its opposite, his craft the constant in the equation of joy and grief. You light a single cone of the funeral incense on a small charcoal disc. You do not pray. You simply watch the smoke rise, a thin, grey-blue column in the still air of your workshop. It smells ancient, comforting, and sad. It is the scent of time itself. The bridal perfume, with its notes of orange blossom and jasmine, still lingers somewhere in the room, a ghost of Tuesday's happiness. The two scents do not clash, they simply coexist, like the two sides of the coin of a life you helped, in your small, aromatic way, to celebrate and to mourn. The calm you feel now is the deepest yet. It is the calm of the witness, the calm of the craftsman who serves not just vanity or health, but the great, turning wheel of human existence, anointing its moments with fragrant smoke and distilled memory. The change comes not with a bang but with a slow, strangling silence. First it is the spices. The caravans from the east become stories, then legends, then nothing at all. The Syrian merchant who brought you the ambergris never returns. The price of pepper in the market becomes a joke, then an obscenity, then simply blank. There is none to price. Then it is the rumors carried by wounded soldiers and hollow-eyed refugees crowding the gates. A new ferocious enemy from the east swallowing kingdoms, closing roads. The name is unfamiliar on most lips, but it carries a finality. The Sultanate of Rum. The world beyond the city walls, which once supplied your workshop with the smells of continents, shrinks to a besieged strip of land. But the true end of your world as you know it is announced by a different kind of official. Not a guild master but a junior logothete, a treasury administrator, accompanied by 2 excubators, palace guards. He comes to your arcade stall with a scroll. His voice is polite but devoid of all warmth. By order of the Basilius, in response to the state of emergency, all non-essential cultivation within the Theodosian walls is hereby requisitioned for the planting of staple crops. This includes the ornamental and aromatic gardens of the great palace. He pauses, letting the words sink into the fragrant air of your stall. The guild's annual harvest from the imperial rose gardens is suspended. Indefinitely. You stare at him. The words are bureaucratic, but their meaning is apocalyptic. The damask roses. The heart of your highest art. The silent, pre-dawn ritual that connected your craft to the very idea of empire. Gone. Not by blight or neglect, but by decree. The empire is starving, and beauty has become a calorie that cannot be spared. The transformation of the city is surreal. You walk in a daze to the districts near the walls where the wealthy once kept their private pleasure gardens. You see work gangs, soldiers and conscripted citizens, digging up beds of lilies and jasmine. The earth, turned and raw, is being planted with rows of dull, hardy kale and thick-rooted beets. Fruit trees are left standing, but their yield will be counted, taxed, allocated. The air loses its layered, cultivated perfume. It begins to smell only of dust, sweat, fear, and the faint, sour odor of mass hunger. Your own trade undergoes a brutal, practical evolution. There is no market for Zoe's resolve or adders of rose. The Empress herself is a memory, gone to a nunnery, her world of scent a forgotten frivolity. Your customers now want one thing. Something to mask the stench of a city under long blockade. The smells of close quarters, of inadequate sanitation, of sickness and despair. You produce vast quantities of a crude, sharp lavender vinegar. You make smelling salts from ammonium carbonate and strong herbs. You even resort to creating a paste of crushed bay leaves and rosemary that people can smear under their noses. A desperate aromatic barricade against the reality outside their doors. Your alembic, once a tool of revelation, now serves a grim purpose. You use it to repeatedly distill poor quality wine into a harsh, potent alcohol, not for drinking but as a base for antiseptic washes. The glassware of Photios becomes a rare treasure. You guard it with your life, for replacement is impossible. The guild's meetings cease. The structure of your professional life, built on law and leisure, crumbles like a sandcastle before the tide of necessity. The calm you must now cultivate is the calm of the survivor, a focused, narrow energy directed only at the problem directly in front of you. How to make this batch of vinegar strong enough, how to trade this jar of it for a loaf of bread or a handful of lentils. One afternoon you climb to a high section of the aqueduct near your home, looking out over the city. The view, once a testament to glorious order, now tells a different story. The green spaces within the walls are gone, replaced by the patchwork brown and dull green of vegetable plots. The great churches still stand, but their glory seems muted, focused inward on prayer for deliverance. The horizon beyond the walls is a blank, hostile space. The siege is not of armies at the gates yet, but of isolation, of a world closing in. The scented empire you served. A network that stretched from your nose to the rose gardens of Syria to the musk deer forests of the Himalayas, has contracted to the few square feet of your besieged workshop and the contents of your nearly empty storage jars. You think of the last vial of true rose attar you have hidden away. Using it now would be an act of madness or of profound private defiance. You leave it where it is. The roses of the palace are gone, plowed under for wheat that will never be enough. Your craft has been reduced to its most primitive function. Not to delight but to disguise. Not to elevate but to endure. The calm is heavy now, the calm of waiting in a darkened room, listening to the sounds of a shrinking world. Your hands idle not because the work is done, but because the materials for the work you were born to do have ceased to exist. The world, when it settles, is quieter. The immediate, knife-edge terror of the long siege has passed, though the city is a worn and poorer version of its former self. The mighty empire is a memory spoken of in the past tense by old men in taverns. A new order, pragmatic and foreign, administers the laws. Your stall in the arcade remains closed, not by decree, but by choice. The market for perfumes has not returned. The new masters have different tastes, simpler, sharper. Your guild is dissolved, its hall repurposed. The great chains of trade that fed your craft are broken, perhaps forever. You are an artifact of a lost civilization, and your workshop is its tomb. Yet, life insists. A young man comes to your door. He is the grandson of your old competitor, Alexandros. He is not a perfumer. He is training to be a notary, a useful profession in any regime. But he has heard stories. He carries with him a curiosity that is not about commerce, but about memory. My grandfather said you knew the smell of the old city, he says, his voice respectful. He said you could make a rose smell like the palace itself. You look at him, this young man of the new world, and you feel not resentment, but a sudden, profound duty. The knowledge in your head, in your hands, in your nose, is more fragile now than any glass alembic. It will die with you. And while the world may no longer need the perfumes of Byzantium, it should at least remember their scent. You do not teach him how to run a business. You do not recite the guild codes. Instead, you take him to your workbench one last time. You go to your most secret hiding place and retrieve 3 small vessels. The last vial of true rose attar, a sliver of the aged ambergris from the caravan merchant, and the tiny, crystal flask that once held the cedar of Lebanon essence for the empress, now with only a few drops remaining. These are your relics. Sit, you say. You light a single, small lamp. The workshop is shadowed, the tools dusty from disuse. You take a clean strip of scenting paper. First, you let him smell the rose attar alone. This, you say, as the sublime fragrance fills the space between you, is not just a flower. This is a morning in May, in a garden that believed it would last forever. It is the smell of certainty. He inhales, his eyes wide with a wonder that is purely sensory, unburdened by commerce or status. Next, you warm the sliver of ambergris and let him smell it. This, you explain, is distance. It is the breath of an ocean you will never sail, the sweat of an animal from a mountain you will never climb. It is the smell of a world that was vast, and connected, and full of strange gifts. He smells it, grimacing at first, then inhaling deeper, caught by its mysterious evolution. Finally, you uncork the cedar essence. And this, you say, your voice softening, is power. Not the shout of power, but its silence. The smell of ancient trees that held up temples, of beams in palaces where history was made. It is the smell of endurance. The clean, sacred scent cuts through the others. Then, you perform the final act. On a new strip of paper, you apply the tiniest drop of each, in a ratio you have carried in your soul for 50 years, 2 parts rose, 1 part ambergris, a half part cedar. You blend them not by stirring, but by waving the paper gently in the air. You hand it to him. Now, you whisper, "Smell this." He brings the paper to his nose. His expression changes, transcends recognition. It is the scent of a lost civilization, grand, melancholic, infinitely complex, and heartbreakingly beautiful. It is the ghost of your life's work. "What is it?" he breathes. You smile, a small, tired smile. It doesn't have a name anymore. Its name was Byzantium. You let him keep the scent strip. When you smell this, you will remember that before there was survival, there was art. Before there was fear, there was beauty. And it was crafted, not by magic, but by hands like these, in rooms like this. He leaves soon after, the fragrant paper clutched in his hand, a young man carrying a scented ghost into a new world. You are alone again. You place the empty vessels back in their hiding place. There is no more attar to make, no more commissions to fill. The calm that descends upon you now is absolute. It is the calm of the scribe who has written the last line of the book. The calm of the gardener who has planted the last seed, knowing he will not see it bloom. Your work is done. The secret is passed on, not as a trade, but as a story told in scent. You sit in the gathering dusk of your workshop, surrounded by the silent, dusty tools of a forgotten art, and you listen as the sounds of the new city drift in, different, simpler, alive. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence smells not of loss, but of peace. The scents fade now, one by one, like stars winking out before the dawn. The sharp citrus of the bridal perfume dissolves into the still air. The solemn smoke of the funeral incense rises and disperses, a final prayer released. The last, glorious ghost of rose and cedar and distant seas lingers a moment longer, a farewell whisper, and then it, too, is gone. The stone of the grinding slab is cool and smooth under your imagined touch, its bowl worn deep by a lifetime of circular, patient motion. The glass alembic sits silent, a delicate monument to a moment of discovery now passed into memory. The rows of empty jars stand like silent sentinels, guarding stories instead of unguents. There is no more to blend, no more to distill, no more to sell. The hustle of the arcade is a distant murmur, a dream from another life. You have navigated the strict laws of the guild, the whims of emperors, the terror of plague, and the slow erasure of an entire world, all from this one quiet space. You crafted not just perfumes, but comfort, prayer, identity, and memory. You held in your hands the essence of gardens and oceans, of power and despair, and you shaped them into something that could be carried, worn, remembered. Now, that work is complete. The hands that knew the weight of every mortar, the brittleness of every petal, the exact pressure needed to release a single, perfect drop of attar, can finally rest. The nose that could decipher a world in a breath has no more puzzles to solve. The calm that remains is not the calm of the workshop, or the market, or the siege. It is deeper, wider, quieter. It is the calm of the harbor after the last ship has sailed, holding only the reflection of the sky. It is the calm of the parchment after the final word has been inscribed. It is the calm of a story that has been fully, faithfully told, its last syllable echoing softly into a grateful silence. The light in the workshop dims, not to darkness, but to a soft, blue twilight. The journey is over. The scents have all told their tales. There is nothing left to do but breathe, and rest, and dream, perhaps, of roses in a garden that exists now only in the gentle, fragrant archives of the night.